To be honest, is the pod going up? To be honest, sit down, we need to have a talk. Cornelius gon' make a point that the others don't. Them other shows sound the same, come escape the box. Expand your mind, dig into no controversial topics. He ain't scared to keep it real. Tune into this podcast, but don't be in your feelings. We gon' have a laugh, we gon' talk about some pain. Let's talk about the present situation of today. Yeah. To be honest, is this the podcast? I need to tune in right now.
Hey, to be honest, it's your boy Cornelius Lindsey, and I am here with Jarid B.
What's up, y'all?
And the B stands for
Bear.
Oh,
Like
okay.
a grizzly bear.
Gri-
Jared Bear. Bear and Jared.
Okay, so the B stands for bear. That's I thought you were going. I actually thought you were going somewhere else with that, but I'm glad that we left that in the PG era. So I want to have a continuation of a conversation that we were having just a minute ago.
Yeah.
And I think if I can title this anything, I would probably call this. Yeah, I read a book years ago. It's probably been 4 years ago since I read this book, but the title of it was "Stop Going to Church."
Yeah.
And I think that's when I started thinking about, okay, what are we doing with church? It was also a preacher I used to listen to a long time ago, and I still listen to some of his sermons now.
Well, I mean, you said stop going to church. I mean, that's big. You can't just skip over that like you just.
The title itself is a little misleading.
Okay.
Because the title itself would assume that the entire message of the book was that we should just stop going to church in general, but the predominant message of the book was we should start being the church.
Yeah.
And it was like stop just going and participating in more, religious traditionalism, and then jump into the. So here's the thing. Let me say this, and I want to get into this dialogue. So I think there was a news article I read. I think it was on Yahoo or Fox, whichever one of the two, and it was saying, maybe in USA Today, I can't remember, but it was saying that there's a lower number of people who are starting to go to church nowadays. In fact, even Generation Z. Generation Z is a generation that is quickly not necessarily accepting truth for what it is. So Generation Z, even though they may say, well, truth exists, they're saying that, I can have my own truth. So a lot of people are going to church, and they gave a number of reasons, because number one, technology has made it a lot easier for us to find our own truth and not settle for a truth that's preach on the stage from a preacher. People are not going to church because of, different things that have happened in church, whether it's been hurt, whatever it is. But people are slowly losing the religion, the traditionalism, all those different things. What do you think about that?
Is it safe to say it's thin? I think it's thin.
What do you mean it's thin?
It's fluff.
You're talking about church in general.
Stuff.
You're talking about church in general.
I mean, I think it is to some degree.
Yeah.
Especially, and it's a lot of fluff.
Yeah.
And you want to talk about impact, or how do you impact somebody? How is somebody impacted from the experience? Are they impacted from the experience?
And that was the thing that I was always cognizant of. As a pastor, I mean, you were there for what, 2 years of it, 2.5 years of it?
Close to 3 years.
Took close to 3 years of it. So I never forget the conversations you and I had with other members of the team, and it was always about the experience.
Yeah.
Like for Easter, let's have this great service on Easter Sunday. Let's have this. Let's create this experience for the people. Remember that? Let's create this experience. And then we had our church was, we constantly had visitors coming, so you had all these different visitors that were coming, coming to church. And was somebody turn their damn car off?
Hey,
Hey. But that's what you get when you have your when you want to do your podcast outside.
gotta go to the commercial break.
That is the commercial break. Like the freak. They can't tell their car is going off. Like the freak. The freak is going on.
I don't think somebody's gonna come get that for a while.
Oh, it's this green.
There we go.
Oh, there you got it.
Obviously, they don't want us to have this conversation, so we're gonna continue it anyway.
But okay, so we had one of those churches where we had people who would come in. I remember there was this one young lady. She worked for one of the airlines, and she lived in New Orleans, but she flew to Atlanta to come to church every Sunday.
How?
Because she worked for an airline.
She worked for an airline. Oh,
so yeah, so she flew into church, come to church every Sunday. There was this one young lady. I remember she was an usher at our church, and she lived in Alabama. And she drove from Alabama. I think she drove almost 2 hours to church and 2 hours back to come to church.
Yeah.
It was we had people who were
That's saying a lot too.
It's saying a ton. Then we also had people who they were saying, our family reunion, we all live in Virginia, but we decided to come to Atlanta, and your church is the church I wanted to come to. Or, I live in LA and I was here on a girls trip and we wanted to come to your church. So it became one of those things, like it was like an attraction type thing. Like, let me come. And then we, being cognizant of that, I wanted to make sure that when people came, they got a good experience. What was the worship like? What was the audio like? What was this like? And what was the highs? What was the lows? What was this? What was that? To the point where you get so enthralled with the experience that you lose all sense of, well, what's the outcome? Yeah.
I was in church in the Middle East 2 weeks ago for Easter Sunday. And I went to an actual mass, a midnight mass. And when I tell you, they were like struggling to like have just a couple words up on the screen on the TV. The lights went out, all the electricity in the whole building went out halfway through the service, through the liturgy. But it was just normal. It just kept like, everybody just kept it moving. Nothing changed. Like all the lights went out in the building and nothing changed. Like it was just normal.
Have we put so much emphasis on the experience that we've kind of lost sense of impact? So, okay, granted, one of my homies, I hit him up and I said, after pandemic, have you gone back to church? His response was, well, I went to one church. He said, and it's the last one I've gone to. He said it was the first live service I went to, and when I went, he said the praise and worship team, the lead singer came out dressed up in like a warrior uniform. And then he said, then they started singing a remix of Monster. I forget who sings the song. I got to tell you exactly what he said. I'm gonna tell you exactly what this guy said.
Kanye's Monster. Not that.
Yeah, he says it's first time in a long time, even before COVID. It's a big church down here that does the top production and sings secular songs to introduce their new sermon series. The whole stage was set up like a forest, and they have a Jurassic Park theme going. They started with the worship set, and then during announcements, one of the worship leaders scaled down a rope in the middle of the audience in costume and said a few lines, walked on the stage, and him and this girl started singing Monsters by Eminem and Rihanna while he fought off a dinosaur using the LED display they perfectly timed out and rehearsed, then popped out a realistic fake dinosaur for shock value. All that just to talk about David and Goliath. Goliath being the monster or dinosaur.
No way. This is not true. Are you serious?
But yeah, because that's the experience. There's the goal. The goal has to be to create an experience. So what I start to see is I see guys who have churches who have maybe 30 or 40 or 50 people who come, and they find themselves trying to compete to be as relevant as the church down the street. Because the church down the street can put on a show like this because they probably banking money or people who give to them.
Yeah.
This young pastor down the street, He got 20, 30, 40 people coming to his church. They probably not giving like that. So he can't afford to do something. Like, he can't put on a whole thing like that. Like, the best he probably got is an Easter play, and they, you know, they throwing sheets on. You know what I mean? Like, real close to Ku Klux Klanish, if you ask me. But, but
you
like,
know who other people are stressed too?
What?
The communications team and the whole
That was you.
creative team. Yeah,
Yeah.
And I'm on a whole communications Facebook group, which has helped me like tremendously, because thousands of people in the communication role are there on the page, lending each other support, advice. Hey, my pastor's doing, and we all. It's so funny, because you see people in there that are stressed. You see people in there and that when they talk about how they feel, as far as being stressed with the level of creativeness that they have to pump out week in and week out.
Yeah.
And it's like everybody in the group understands how they feel.
Yeah.
You know? And that's another thing. It's like, okay, not that the pastors are stressed out. Pastors are stressed out because they got to deal with all these people, make it, you know what I mean? And then the leaders under the pastor are stressed out because they're the day by day and the constant staying ahead of the game, staying 2 steps ahead, and constantly having to evolve and to produce the next best graphic.
And when I bring up this conversation, you know, most people, they'll say, so what's the alternative? Here's one thing that pisses me off. So during the pandemic, you know, I'm around all these different pastors, and we're having these conversations about this very thing.
Yeah.
And then we would all agree and say, you know what? Something has to change. Something should be different, right?
Yeah.
The problem is that we're talking about something should change and something should be different. But the issue is that it's kind of like everybody kind of went back to the same thing. And my question is like, okay, is that effective?
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, is that effective? And then we say, okay, well, we need community. If the sermon was so important, as so many people say this, the sermon was so important, then the question must be asked, and during the pandemic, the sermon was still going on. It was being streamed. People weren't watching it. Mm-hmm. So if the sermon was so important, then that means that people wanted to stop the flow. That means the numbers wouldn't have went down because people would have found a way to listen to the sermon. If the worship was so important, then people would have found a way to listen and watch the worship. Mm-hmm. For me, being a pastor, being outside of that, being kind of outside of that fold now, but in a complete, I feel like what I do now is still pastoring, but I feel like one of the most important things, Jay, was that what people missed the most out of that setting was connectivity.
Yeah.
And I get it. I did the same thing. In church, we try to create groups, community groups, small groups. Get connected. Let's get connected. It's almost like we're trying to force people into these groups. And then once we get into these groups, it's like, what kind of changed out of this? Are we still gossipy? Are we still backbiting?
Are we being in the groups?
Yeah, in the groups. And then because, you know, the group turns into a small church where they gossip about the pastor.
And they think that it should be done this way.
Yeah, it's like, well, now they've started gossiping about the pastor. They gossiping about the church. And, you know, and then it's like, well, let's not go to this church. Well, let's go to this church. Or, you know, you should start the church. You should start your own church, and I'll be a member of your church. I can't tell you how many times it happened to us, you know. Mm-hmm. But
So you're talking about effectiveness, right? So I would ask, okay, what is it? What is the measure in which the standard by which we're measuring effectiveness?
I think that's the answer that I'm still kind of running with. I heard a pastor say this. He said, you know, the reason why it's so important for us to use metrics to decide effectiveness and success in the church He said it's because the Bible talks about metrics. He used the example of Noah. God gave Noah, he gave him very, very detailed metrics. He talked about, the metrics that were used in Acts and, blah, blah, blah. And this number of 3,000 people were added to their number to talk about using metrics. I think that metrics cripple us because we become so dependent on this amount of people who came, this amount of people who tithed, this amount of people who did this. These are all the amounts of people that come together to make up what we do. And then we say, well, this amount of people who got saved. But then I ask the question, how are we measuring that? Are we measuring their salvation because they said a prayer? And then that now that gets into theology, because I've never been one to be a stickler for that whole prayer salvation thing, because you can get involved in emotionalism with that real quick, and you don't have to be following Jesus. It's almost like, well, I'm saying it in the moment because I'm repeating a prayer after you, but I've always been of the faith. I always preached it. I mean, shoot, I ain't got to tell you to say something if you believe it. I ain't got to ask you to repeat after me if you believe. If you believe it, if you don't, you just don't say it. But it's the metrics that we're now using. It almost become a pissing contest amongst pastors.
It is.
Because now I remember being in rooms with pastors and they'll say, well, hey Cornelius, how many people you running? And then now the biggest thing is how many campuses you got, or how big is your building? And it's like, man, like you trying to judge dick sizes. Like, I mean, I don't know. What's your percentage of people tithing in the church? I don't know. Ask the accountant. We have a whole accounting team. I don't know. What care about the people who tithe into the church? If they give and they give, they don't. I don't know what to tell you, bruh.
Right.
So.
Right. But what's it mean anyway? You know what I mean? Like, what even ask that question for? Like, what do you get out of something like that?
Yeah, I think it's
a pissing contest.
It's a pissing contest. It's trying to figure out, how big you are in comparison to how big I am.
Yeah.
And I just think this whole experience thing has just kind of gotten us. I mean, even to the point, people ask me, well, are you going to make sure? I feel like when people ask me where I go to church now, I tell them I go to Windy Hill Athletic Club. I go to the gym. I don't know. I mean, and I joke when I tell people that, but
I think what was it? We were talking about this earlier too, and for me, I seen the change when I left my local small town community church when I was about 16 years old, and I moved and went to a much larger church, where I felt that where you're talking about the connectivity was lost in that transition. Not just because I was a stranger somewhere else, I feel. Not just because of that, because I've gone to new churches, we visited new churches and still had that same feel of connectivity before. But for me, that connectivity was lost when I'm a stickler for choral worship. Now, we might say that, oh, well, there's choral worship. There's a community, choral worship now. But it's not the same. It's really not the same. It's thin.
Yeah.
It's thin. I've sat in the audiences in different churches, and no bash against this, but it just doesn't feel the same.
It's a performance.
It doesn't feel the same.
Well, for me, it's a performance. And again, I'm not. People don't think I'm trying to bash them. I'm not. I'm just. I'm as honest as it's called To Be Honest. The podcast is called To Be Honest, and oftentimes I even felt like that at the Go in my church. I'm like, it's like it can become a performance, and I would appreciate, when our worship leaders would say, hey guys, I'm not performing for y'all. We got to do this together. Let's sing together. I think some of my most powerful moments were those times when the people on the stage, when the worship leaders would say stop, they would stop singing. And then the church was singing along. And it was such a beautiful sound. You know what I mean? It was like we're all doing this collectively. Yeah. But a lot of times I feel like it's found in the entertainment. It's found in the performance. And so we've gotten away from saying, hey, I'm going to church, because now as pastors in churches we say, well, now we have a 9 a.m. experience, an 11 a.m. experience, and a 1 a.m. experience. Because that's what we call it now. It's like You're going to get an experience. And I think part of it is like, okay, the experience, it may entertain, but does it change? And then what is the goalpost? Like you just asked me, is the goalpost effectiveness? Like what is the outcome? What am I seeking to produce out of this? If I'm seeking to produce a bunch of people who just came and had a good time and laughed and blah, 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 and that's it, then Gucci, we good. But what is the goalpost? And then taking that back to Acts 2, which I get a lot of. Well, not Acts 2, but Hebrews. It says, don't forsake the assembling of yourselves together as some do. And I would say, see, that means you need to go to church.
Yeah.
But again, I think that's one of those scriptures, like the same thing when people use Malachi in order to push this idea of tithing, saying that you have to tithe. Like, because Malachi said, if you don't tithe, then the devourer won't be rebuked. So then you driving along in your car and, you get a flat tire and you think, oh, I didn't get my tithe last week. The devil got me, and it's like, that is a miscategorization, miscategorization of that scripture, misinterpretation of the scripture. If you look at Malachi chapter 1, it's very clear he was talking to the priest, and that was a reason, but never mind, I'm not getting all that. But even that, don't forsake the assembling of yourselves. We look in Acts 2, the early church. They lived in a community. Mm-hmm. They knew each other. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. They knew each other. And it's hard to know people who go to your church now, because people go to your church, like, 100 of them may live in East Atlanta. 300 may live in West Atlanta. You got some people who live in South Atlanta. We don't stay in the same community. Mm-hmm. I think it'd be different if everybody who lived in one big apartment building all went to the same church. That may be a powerful, effective church, because I know you. I know what you need. I know where you live. If you need something, I'm right next door.
What you're capable of doing, what you're not capable of doing.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. But now I'm trying to develop relationship with people who live 40 minutes away from me. So I can only have, my women's small group or men's small group, once a week.
Wednesday from 7 to 7:30.
7 to 7:30, because I got to drive. I got a 30-minute drive home. I got kids. Yeah, I got to
make breakfast.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Like, I got to be home for this. Mm-hmm. So it's almost like, what are we doing?
Yeah. Yeah.
What is it? Are we, and for me, I have lost, I won't say I've lost, but I am quickly losing all sense of religion.
Yeah.
To the point where I'm like,
I lost mine, brother.
Bro, Easter got me. As a pastor or as an ex-pastor, I was looking out on Instagram and I saw the churches. I saw the pastors, Easter, here's what I'm doing. Here's what I'm doing. Here's what I'm doing. And it was almost like it was a pissing contest. It was like, here's going to be my Easter experience. We're going to have 5 Easter experiences and we're dumping 1 million eggs. There's going to be 1 million eggs. Last year, we didn't get a chance to do it. Last year, we had 500,000. This year, we're doing 1 million eggs. And you got to come, and we're going to have an Easter bunny there, and we're going to have this there, and, there's going to be a special Jesus going to be there. I mean, and it was like, and then, some of the churches who could afford it's like, we're going to have this musical artist there. Oh, you got to be there because for this experience, we're going to have this musical artist and this musical artist. And it was almost like, we're kind of competing to who can have the best musical artist. And we're going to have this big Easter production, this big Easter play. And don't worry, if you can't join us there, you can join us online. And then afterwards, I was texting pastors and stuff like that, and they were just telling me how frustrated they were. They put in all this work. They got no appreciation, no thank yous, no appreciation, none of that. And I just texting people who were like, hey, did you go to church today? Yeah, I went. What was your biggest takeaway? Man, I don't know. I'm like, man, I'm talking to the pastors, and the pastors are saying everything they put into this. And then I'm talking to the people who went, and they're like, I don't know. Mm-hmm. And it's almost like I wish the two could talk to each other so the pastor could really ask the question, well, what were you looking for? Mm-hmm. And then they could see that maybe the pastor could see that everything I thought you were looking for, that's not even what I was trying to provide. I was trying to provide an experience. and you came looking for connectivity.
Yeah.
You just wanted somebody to see you. You wanted somebody to look at you and say, you have anxiety, you're depressed. Me too.
Because you can feel that.
Yeah.
You can feel that. And a lot of times you don't even have to ask that question.
Yep.
You can just know.
Yep.
And I think that in church, the electronics, they cancel out the vibration between like
The people.
And not if it cancels out, it just overpowers.
Mm-hmm.
It overpowers. That's why you feel the best when you go to church, out in the lobby, when you're talking to people,
Yeah.
you know?
Around the cafe.
Right, you know?
Yeah.
You're meeting people and you're connecting with people. That's why people come to church.
Yeah. They have
You know,
Me Too moments.
That's why I love to go.
Yeah.
Why I went there, because it was exactly what I needed, man.
Yeah.
Like it was everything I needed. I needed people. I needed to be around friends that like spoke life into me. I needed to be around, you know, somebody that liked me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that was one of the biggest things as a pastor. I felt like I had more people who if they appreciated the sermon, I appreciate them for saying that. But I had more people after I resigned. Thank you. I had more people after I resigned to say, if there was one thing they said they missed the most about church, about me being a pastor, they said, I'm going to miss you being outside when I left. Mm-hmm. Because I made it a point every Sunday after church to beat everybody else outside. And whether you looked at me or you didn't. Because I had some people who I'd be like, hey, and they would just walk right by me, didn't even look up. But I had some people where I was like, hey, you see me talking to you. How you doing? Like, bye, have a good week. Or have a good week. And I was doing my best to look people in their eyes. Hey, have a good week. Or, people who walk past me, just kind of touch them on their shoulder and you see them light up. And I would have, single moms that'll bring their kids over. And it's like, hey, Pastor Cornelius, talk to him. He wasn't acting up today. He was acting up today in class. It's like, what's going on, man? You miss your dad? I know, man. I know.
And then that hug from that kid is all he needed.
That's all he needed. And then the mom was like, I would have single moms break down crying. And like, oh, I really appreciate you talking to him. And then they would say something like this. He looks forward to this every week. It was like those type of interactions. It was about the connectivity.
Yeah.
I remember when we would do things like the barbecue. We did a barbecue at Piedmont Park. We did our Friendsgiving around Thanksgiving, and it would be packed out full of people because it was all about breaking bread, sitting down with each other, having connectivity, talking, hanging out. And we would open up our house to people after church. So after church, it was nothing for have 30, 40 people over in our house sitting in our living room, because we knew it was about connectivity. People are hurting out here. And my question is, like, this thing I've been pondering is like, is it the experience? Is that what we have kind of dwindled down church to? Just experience. Connectivity is dirty, is nasty, is messy. You're going to get hurt. I mean, because you got to love, and anything you love deeply, if you love deeply, you can get hurt deeply. So, man, I
just think that the church is constantly looking to evolve. They're looking for the next best thing, and you have to go higher.
Yeah.
You got to do better. You got to do more. And then maybe that's not really it,
I think it's found in the simple.
I know for sure it is.
Yeah. Like, I can't shake, the experience I had at that fellowship gathering in Ethiopia.
Yeah.
Like, I legit told Heather. And Heather and I, we had been married for a couple months. I told Heather, I said, if I wasn't married, I wouldn't have came back to America. I would have stayed at Addis Ababa. Because there's just something about just kind of being in the community.
Yeah.
I walked around in the community with this lady. She's like, yeah, I know who live at this house. So I walked in there. I walked in one house. It was like, coffee made me coffee. Then I went to the next house. Coffee? You want, And like she had this other lady, she made food. This other lady, she was like, would you pray for my son? This other lady was like, would you pray for my husband? This other lady, would you anoint my doorpost? It was just, we went from house to house in a village. But she knew everybody. Everybody knew everybody, And it was just like, yo.
Everybody knows what everybody needs.
Everything. But even before I went into some houses, she was like, oh yeah. Like these right here, they're going through this, and her husband just died, and she has 3 kids, and I'm like, man, you know? And I miss that because I grew up in that in Mississippi.
Yeah.
I grew up in a small town, so I get it. So I really think that because we're trying to go, I think the other thing that it gets me, and we can be done after this, man, but one thing that I see is that because of celebrityism in church, that now small churches think, or small pastors, however you put it, they somehow assume that they're not effective or valuable unless they get big.
It's dangerous, bro.
So they trying to be big, and they never appreciate the gift that's in the small.
Yeah.
And it's almost like, man, I just keep asking the question, are we headed in the wrong direction? Because it's okay. It is no problem to do a great work.
Mm-hmm.
But I just don't want to do a great work headed in the wrong direction. It's almost like, you look up at, God gives you a shovel and you start digging and you start digging. Then like you get this huge ocean, and you fill it full of fish and water, and you put all these boats and stuff on it, you make it look really good, and you go to God and you say, God, look what I did. And God said, you dug a hole just like I told you to. You just dug it in the wrong place. You just like, oh,
Destiny is wiser though than wisdom.
Yeah.
So if you
explain that.
If you would have known the right hole to dig it in, then your destiny might have been. Destiny always leads you to right where you should be.
Yeah.
No matter what. Wisdom would have told me not to go over to the Middle East.
Yeah.
Wisdom would have said, dig it over, in this hole, or dig it over in this hole. Even though that might have been the right hole to dig it in, digging this hole probably prepared you to dig that hole.
Yeah.
And are we heading in the right direction, or are we headed in the wrong direction? Life is going to continue to move forward no matter what. And the church is going to continue to evolve. And I think it's almost impossible to just start from scratch, because it seems that the simplicity and the unison of it seems to be the honey that attracts the bees. You know what I mean? That seems to be the sticking point. But at this point, you can't go back and completely undo everything that the church has grown into.
Yeah.
But I think it's good to have these conversations to realize that, there's a problem.
Yeah.
Like there's something that can supersede everything that we see in the celebrityism and the emotionalism and the attraction. There's something far, far greater that we're missing out for that is far simpler.
It's connectivity. That's what I feel deep down in my soul. That's what it is. I was having a conversation with, pastors, stuff like that. And it was about Little Nas X. And it was about, those shoes he put out. He has a new a YouTube video and all this stuff. And they were like, one of the guys, he said, I don't know who knows him, but we got to get him in church. And I told the pastor, I said, that's the worst idea ever. I don't think he needs to be in church. I think he needs a touch. He needs connectivity.
How sad is that to say that? Like
we get him in church. And I was like, if you read his words, somebody sent me his Twitter thing. I don't follow him or anything.
I saw what he wrote.
You saw his words?
Yeah,
the whole thing is about a thing to his younger self.
I saw that.
It's about, the hurt and the pain. Like so y'all sent me to hell and y'all said I'm going to hell for it, then, just let me go to hell now. And I'll just dance. I'll dance with Satan, and then I'll create shoes. Most of it was like a parody almost to this is what y'all are going to do. It was so ironic and stuff. And they were like, yeah, he needs to get in church. And I'm like, well, no, because that's not going to change him. I feel like church nowadays, it's almost like it helps to change the actions, but it ain't doing nothing to the person's heart. Like I can teach a lion how to gallop like a horse. I can teach him how to jump through a hoop. I can teach a lion all these things, but I can't teach a lion to just eat grass all day. Like if I just tell him, I put him in a cage and I say, okay, lion, I put him there for 2 weeks with just grass. He may chew on some grass, but as soon as I get in the cage to change out the cage, he's going to eat me.
Chew on you.
Because he is carnivorous in nature. I'm not changing that lion's heart. He's going to always be carnivorous. In order for me to change the heart, there has to be an encounter, and we get an encounter through connectivity. Like Jesus encountered me. I didn't come to know of Jesus Christ because of church. I came to know of Jesus Christ because he encountered me. Like I can get an encounter outside. I can get an encounter anywhere else. So it's like we got to get him in church, but for what? Like he legit needs love. And then the one thing that most people gave him only proved his point.
Right.
It only enticed him even more than everybody else who feels exactly like him. Said, this is why I don't, and I you know. And people say, well, what's right is right. And I get that. I get it. Well, did they lie to him? Because you got to tell him what's right. You got to tell him the truth. He can do what he wants to do with it. And I'm like, have we lost all sense of empathy? Like, where's the connectivity? Where is the stepping off of your high horse and remembering the parts of your life that could send you straight to hell? And you looking at him and saying, listen, let's have a conversation. Tell me about your life. Well, people, I don't talk about what people said. Let's just talk about you. How are you doing? Where's your head at? Where's your mind at? Let's just talk about we got to talk about. Let's just get a hamburger. Let's get some fries. Get to know me first. Let's develop a mutual respect for each other, and then we can maybe have a conversation about something that could be impactful to your soul. We're like, let's get them in church. And I think a lot of pastors want to get them in church so they can say, Little Nas X goes to my church. A celebrity goes to my church. I was like, Nick, excuse me. All right.
This is to be honest, y'all.
I'm like, man.
Be honest.
I don't get it, man. But this pollen out here is about to rip me to shreds. So, y'all, we love y'all. Make sure you
gotta go home and think about all
of this. Man. But yo, I appreciate y'all for always rocking out with To Be Honest, man. Make sure you share it with your family, your friends, share it with mom and them, share it with all of them. Let them know. And I want y'all to have this conversation too. Yeah. I want y'all to have this conversation with your family, your friends. The studies out there are showing that people aren't going to church. People are losing their religion. And then when it comes to, they said millennial generation they're supposed to be the last generation that is going to embrace a sense of truth. The Generation Z, the generation right after us, Generation Z, that they will say truth that if truth exists, then it is your own truth. Mm. And that could be a very scary thing. And they're saying that they are not going to church. Generation Z is not.
Yeah.
And and I know I know some thing will pick that up, and church will say, no, Generation Z is coming. I mean, look, we got 1,000 people from that generation that's coming. And I'm like, well, because we nowadays in the Christian community, we say, no, we're making a big impact. And I'm like, but even the biggest church, I think Atlanta has like 6 million people in it.
Yeah, I was just looking that up.
6 million people in Atlanta, right? So let's just say the largest church in Atlanta.
Atlanta.
In Metro Atlanta. So let's just say the largest church in Metro Atlanta. Let's just say if it had 50,000 members. That's not even 1% of the total number of people in Metro Atlanta.
But you would imagine it's all of Atlanta.
You would imagine it's all like
church.
We touching Atlanta. Mm-hmm. But are we? We're even touching 1% of Atlanta. And then the other thing that came out was like, we're not even sending people on the mission field anymore. I mean, man, I get more Jehovah's Witness than, not Jehovah's Witness, but Mormons who knock on my door.
Really?
Oh, man, them Mormons, they be, and now because of COVID, Mormons, they not even knocking anymore. They sending handwritten letters. I got a whole handwritten letter. I told Heather, I said, do we know Harry?
converted.
I was like, do we know Harry? Has Harry ever come here before? And he was like, your friend. He was like, your friend, Harry. He's like, he put all the information for church. He hand wrote it, where to come to church and everything. And I was like, do we know Harry? I mean, hey, Cornelius and Heather, God bless you too, blah, 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 blah. And I had to look it up. And then when I saw at the bottom of it, www.jw.com, I was like, oh, they Jehovah Witness. No, it wasn't. No, it was. So that one was Jehovah's Witness. They was a J-Dub. That was J-Dub who sent that one. But the Mormons, I'm like, yo, they write letters, not sending text messages.
They was coming to our house, our apartment in the hood, bro. And I made good friends with one of the guys. Like, I don't get into arguments with people, man.
I became a Mormon, so you already know where that went to.
I know what That's right. I forgot about that.
I became a Mormon. All right, y'all, we done for real this time. Hey, yo, maybe I'll tell y'all that story some other time. God bless y'all. We love y'all.
All right, y'all. Peace.